is Chapter 4 that looks at identifying the product in the business concept. And in this chapter, we're going to look at the product and how it affects the development of the business concept. The merchandise that a retail store carries is critical in forming a niche to reach a specific customer base, and it is used to separate yourself from the competition and ensure sales and profit. So this is a really important step of the business plan. And this is where you're going to investigate the types of products that are available and the level of products that may be offered and the stage and the product life cycle that these products represent and the ways of differentiating the inventory from others through product trends such as branding and licensing. And at this stage, we want to be looking at what products you're going to feature in your store and what type of products are available. There are two types of entrepreneurs. There are those who create a product and sell it, and those who sell existing products. So that's a big thing you need to determine too. Are you just going to buy your products at market, or are you actually going to try to develop a product? So probably for this class, I would just say that you're going to sell an existing product, but that's totally up to you. Next, you need to define the product. And a product is anything offered to a market for attention, acquisition, use, or consumption. And a product can satisfy a customer's want or need and can be an item, a service, a place, an organization, or an idea. So an item would be a product that you buy, such as a shirt. Service would be a service that you would buy. So a service could be a personal shopper. A place could be, speaking of like say a vacation, taking a vacation somewhere, that's a place that you buy to stay at a certain place. And then also providing an organization or an idea, that would be like a trend service where you, or a marketing team that provides a marketing plan for you. Some other examples of organization or ideas would be a fashion show production that someone puts on for you, or an example of a service would be also an image makeover. And a product can be intangible or tangible. An intangible product are things you can't touch, such as a service or an idea. And a tangible product are physical and touchable and are divided into two classifications of non-durable and durable goods. Non-durable are consumed in a few uses, such as shampoo, while durable survive many uses like clothing, accessories, and fabrics. Service products are activities, benefits, or satisfactions that are offered for sale, such as alterations, personal shopping, design work. While unsought goods are items that customers don't seek out, so they have to be promoted, such as the Snuggie, which has been promoted heavily on television, and so that's why there's a big promotion, because it's not something that someone would necessarily think of wanting, but once it's promoted, people buy it. And actually at the end of your book, if you look on page 84, you can go to an article under online resources, and they have an article on this Snuggie and the success story of that. Next are fashion goods, and these are popular products for a given period of time, so they're not going to last for very long. Example of that of a fashion good would be tie-dye. So tie-dye has been popular, but it's not going to last for very long. Also, there's staple and basic goods, and these are always in demand and rarely influenced by fashion change. So example of staple and basics would be socks and underwear. Next is hard goods, and those are appliances, electronics, and home furnishings. Then you also have soft goods, and these are textile and apparel products or accessories. And then last is high-end goods, which are high priced, and then low-end goods that are not, or that are priced low. Products can also be classified by brand preference and frequency of use. There's 3 different types of ways to classify products. They can be convenience, shopping, or specialty goods. And convenience goods are purchased frequently and easily with minimal comparison shopping and evaluating. So example of that would be socks. If you need a pair of socks, you just go to the store and buy them. You don't necessarily shop around for socks. Next are shopping goods, and those are goods that you shop around for and compare price, quality, style. And examples of these would be special occasion wear. So if you have a special event to go to and you want a special dress, you're probably not necessarily going to look at one place, or especially like a wedding dress, you're usually going to go more than one place to find a dress. And these shopping good items are usually more expensive items. And then you have specialty goods, and these are items in which buyers are willing to make a special purchase effort because of a brand or unique characteristics. So example of this would be Tory Burch. And you want your goods to be in this product group because the customers are devoted and they make repeat purchases of these products. Chart that's on the screen is showing the comparison of specialty, convenience, and shopping goods based on price, frequency of purchase, shopping trip distance and time, customer service, and customer brand specific. And this is also listed in your book, figure 4.2. So as you can see, your customer is willing to pay more, purchase more, spend more time looking for, demand more customer service, and be brand specific for specialty products. So you know if you have this specialty product that the customer that wants this product will come in. So that's why you want to carry as many specialty products in your product line as possible. So one of the best ways to analyze a product is to divide it into parts. And there's 3 levels of all products. There's the core, the formal, and the augmented. The core is the product's main benefit or service. So say you open a handbag store. Your core product is going to be handbags. Next is the formal level of the product, and this is the packaging, the brand name, the quality of the product, the styling, or any other tangible features of your product. So if we're looking at handbags and you look at the pink one in the picture, you would say some of the formal levels of the product would be the little leather tag that's hanging off. And then you would also see that it also has a little clip for your keys on the side. Those would all be part of the formal level. And then also I'm pretty sure it's a Coach purse, so that would be also the brand name. That's part of the formal level. And the last level is the augmented level, and this is the product extras. So this would be a warranty, after sale service. So that's one thing that especially with handbags, certain companies offer is they offer warranties on your handbag, or you can send your handbag in to have it repaired. So those would be the augmented part of it. And most of the time, the augmented level will be minimal and low price items. So usually you only have the augmented level of a product in more high-end luxury products. Now we're going to look at the product life cycle. And an understanding of the product life cycle is essential for determining your target market, your pricing and promotion of your product, and selecting your channel of distribution. The product life cycle is a model designed to identify the maturation stage of a particular product by approximating its level of customer acceptance. And to market your business effectively, you need to identify your different products' life cycle. So looking at product life cycle, the first stage of the product life cycle is the introductory stage. And this is when innovative goods that appeal to fashion leaders or trendsetters are offered. So this is the very beginning, and mainly the only people that are really going to buy your product at this point are your fashion leaders or trendsetters. And during this stage, the focus is on marketing the new product to your potential customers. And your advertising is used to educate consumers about how the product will satisfy their needs because it's a new product that hasn't been offered. And at this stage, profitability can be low because the cost of introducing the product and promoting it can be very high. The next stage is the growth stage. And this stage is in between the maturity stage and introduction. And this is when a large number of consumers begin to accept and purchase your product. And the product typically generates its peak sales volume as it moves through this stage, the maturity stage. And the product will not stay here forever, and a new product will need to be brought in or modified once you get to the decline stage. The next stage is maturity, and this is when the product is at its peak or plateau in sales and mass produced and mass marketed. So this is when you're going to have your most sales, produce the most. And your sales will continue to increase, but at a slower rate than they did at the growth stage. And you're going to have increased competition start at this stage, and your price may need to be lower to compete because of supply and demand. So there's going to be more supply of products similar to yours, so you won't have as high of demand, so you'll have to decrease your price. And also you may also have lower profit margins because you've had to decrease your sales. And at this stage, you must differentiate the product with added services such as delivery, gift wrap, competitive pricing. So at this stage, when there's competitors, you've got to find how are you going to differentiate your product from someone else's to make them come to you. And the last stage is decline, and this is when the product is found in discount stores and on markdown racks. And sales continue to drop in this stage until profit margins are extremely low. So this is when you'll see items going to Ross or TJ Maxx or different places like that. So how do we apply the product life cycle? Well, as a product moves through its life cycle, you can measure your opportunities for growth by analyzing the life cycle stages. So when you go to develop your product line, you need to look to see where these products are, what stage they're in. So if they are, which most of your products will probably be in the maturity stage. So how are you going to differentiate yourself or do something different with your product to get your customer to come visit you? And you use the product life cycle to determine when to introduce new products into your inventory. And these would be new merchandise classifications, new vendors, and new items. And when you're looking at the product life cycle, you also have to determine when you're going to stop selling the product or try to revise that product because it's heading towards the decline stage. And the time to introduce a new product would be during the early stages of the life cycle when sales are strong and profits are high. So the best time to introduce would be at the growth stage because that's when the profits are the highest. And if you look at figure 4.6, page 74, it shows the timing sequence as it relates to the product life cycle for the designer, the product developer, the manufacturer, and the retailer. Now we're going to look at using used products or new images for old products. So this kind of goes along with the product life cycle. If something's in that decline stage, what can you do? Well, one thing you can do is you can create new images for existing products. So an example of this would be taking jeans, which jeans have been around. Everyone wears jeans, but I wouldn't necessarily say that people always pick one jean over another. So what some retailers, such as True Religion and 7 for All Mankind, did is they took jeans to a new level to increase and bring them back to kind of the growth and maturity stage. And what they did is they just updated the style of the jeans. They used more luxury denim, and they marketed these jeans as a status goods, where jeans used to not be considered a status good. You can also find new uses for old products. So this is where we've seen a lot of resale stores, or you also see a lot of stores that resell kids clothing and sporting goods, And especially with our economy, that's when you'll see an influx a lot of resale stores, which are doing really well right now. And your resale stores, they do well with the value conscious consumers and environmentally concerned consumers. And with today's environment of recycling, that the resale shop and the vintage clothing shop is doing well, and they also provide bargain prices, which goes well with our economy. Now we're going to look at services that you can use with your products. And if your product is actually a service, you need to look at making the core service as appealing as possible to the customer. So examples would be trend and color forecasting would be a service within retail. Image consulting and fashion event production would all be forms of a service. And if you have a service, you must have amazing customer relations, because that is what they remember, because they have nothing tangible to remember. They just remember what you did for them and what you provided and how well you did that. However, if you have a tangible product, you need to determine the types and levels of customer service you will offer to complement your product, and they need to be determined before your price is determined, because the more services you offer, the higher your price tends to be, or you're going to need to determine, are these extra services you're going to provide cost extra added on, or are you just going to build the cost in to the original cost that they pay. Also, you need to remember, if you're going to have high-end products, they tend to offer more services than low-end products. So some high-end services that retailers usually provide would be alterations, home delivery, personal shopping. While if you think of Sam's, which is your discount wholesaler, you have to bag your own items, you have to take them to your car. So they offer you less services, but they give you great prices in return. And there's two types of service that you can have. You can have pre-purchase and post-purchase service. And pre-purchase service would be an example of that within retail would be customizing your item. So if you look on the screen, the picture shows Nike, where you can customize your shoes. Another example would be having exclusivity, or having your special certain customers get to shop the sale first if they're a devoted customer. And next would be post-purchase, and this would be alterations, replacement guarantees or warranties, delivery, gift wrap, or repeat purchase discounts. So those are forms of post-purchase service. And you see a lot, especially of the repeat purchase discounts, has become really popular of late. So when determining the services you'll offer, the customer needs to pay for these services offered. So that, as I said before, it's either you're going to increase your price and include those services for free because you added them into the price, or you're going to have those services as a separate cost from the product. So an example of having those services included and having a higher price would be like high-end clothing. You would offer a service of personal shopping, when someone can come in, they're with a specific person and they help them shop, and then they get personal shopping, but they're paying more for the products that they buy. Next is branding, and branding has become an integral part of the fashion industry. And branding is a name, term, sign, or design, or a combination of these. And it's intended to identify the goods or services from one seller or group of sellers and to differentiate them from those of competitors. And there's two types of branding. There's branding of the product and the business. And you need to ensure that your products you are buying fit with your branding image. So if you have this certain image, you need to pick brands that go with that image that you're creating for your retail shop. Brands develop a certain image that customers feel if they wear these items, they will portray that image. And that's one of the big things you want to do is if you want your customer to think if they buy your product that they get this certain image that they're wanting. And so you figure out what that image is that your customer wants when you look at their demographics and psychographics, and that's what you target to is I'm going to give you this specific image that you're wanting to portray. And when you do this, it allows your customer to use your product to show their personality. And if you can, that's kind of a big key. If you can do that, you can be very, very successful and keep people coming back to you. Now we're going to look at brand names, trademarks, and copyrights. And some brands have visual identifiers of the product, or a business may have certain identifiers, such as the brand mark. And the brand mark is the visual part of the brand. And the brand name is something that can be localized. And a trademark is a word, logo, or other symbol used to identify or distinguish a product from other companies or a brand. And the visual component of a trademark is the trade dress. So for Nike, it would be the check. And for Levi, it would be the little red tab. Or for Polo, it would be the polo horse. Or the LV for Louis Vuitton would be the trademark. And the combined visual components of the trademark are referred to as the trade dress. And so if you can create a brand name with a brand mark where people recognize you, that's a huge, huge way to get a following. Also, another thing to look at is intellectual property. And this is the exclusive rights to reproduce, publish, or sell the trademark in the form of a literary, musical, or artistic work. And this is referred to as your copyright. And intellectual property is any product, service, or retail operation that is the result of a creative process and that has commercial value. And protecting your intellectual property is critical to the success of your company. So an example of that would be Louis Vuitton, the LV. That's their intellectual property that's copyrighted that no one else can use. Another way besides a designer brand that you see like that, a retailer can have private label brands for their store, and that helps give them exclusivity for their store. So an example of a private label brand would be St. John's Bay Men or St. John's Bay Women for JCPenney. That would be one example of a private label brand. Next is brand sponsorship, and this refers to the selection among 3 primary brand alternatives available to a fashion retailer. And first is manufacturer brands or national brands. And these are brands that are nationally advertised that you can get all over. So an example of that would be Nike. Next are private brands, and this is when you buy goods at wholesale with no brand on it, and then you sell them under your name. And this is done a lot in accessories. Example of this would be like Charming Charlie's. And next is private label, and this is the brand for the retail operation that no one else has and is with their own brand name on the items. And it's proprietary brands can also kind of fall under the private label, and these are celebrity brand images that partner with certain retailers. So an example of that would be Jessica Simpson for Macy's. And private label merchandise allows the retailer to tailor goods to their customer needs, desires, and taste. And you tend to make more off your private label items since you have developed them yourself. And also, there also are exclusive goods, and these are goods that are limited to a few specific retailers in an area. So if you were going to be a small retailer, you would want to try to get any exclusive goods you could get that would only be given to, say, you and another retailer in the town, or maybe you would be the only person in the town that could get those. Next is brand value, and this is the worth of the brand in terms of customer recognition, image, and potential sales volume. And brands with strong images are the result of a successful nurturing of the relationship between the producer and consumer. So the big thing here is you need to really know what your consumer wants, what image they want to portray, and that's what you're going to portray with your brand. With any of your marketing that you do or advertising, you're going to portray that specific brand. And to have a successful brand, you need to invest in that brand. You need marketing and you need corporate support. And the most recognizable brands maintain their position by establishing loyalties. You want to have loyal customers that love your brand and follow that brand and look for it. And great brands can become the generic name for that product by creating a direct relationship between the consumer and producer. So example of that would be Kleenex. When you think of a Kleenex, you think of that brand. You don't say tissue. You can say I need a Kleenex. Also Coke. A lot of times if you go somewhere, if you live in the South, you say I need to get a Coke, and then they'll ask you what kind of Coke you want. So those are just two examples of generic names that have kind of taken over what people think of for that product. And last, we're going to look at licensing and royalties. And licensing is the effective way to establish brand value, and it is a way to get into different product areas by using a brand with an established name that has a customer following. And the brand name can be a celebrity, like is our picture Jessica Simpson. It can be a designer, Chanel. It could be a manufacturer. An example would be Nike. Or it can be a company. An example of a company would be Express. And brands can expand their product lines by licensing their brands to companies that specialize in products. For example, Fossil produces watches for Donna Karan under her label. And at the same time, Fossil licenses its brand to companies to produce their handbags for them. And if you look at box 4.1, page 82, it shows all the licensing companies that make products for Betty Johnson, and there's actually quite a few different companies. So she's not actually making all the products herself. Also, designers or brand houses, such as an example would be Martha Stewart, receive royalties from merchandise that's manufactured by licensors. And royalty is a payment that can vary in terms of amount, and it's usually from 3 to 10% of the wholesale price, and it's often with a required minimum amount of sales. So they're saying, well, we'll give you a royalty, but there has to be a certain amount of sales, and then we'll give you this percentage of the wholesale price. So an example of getting royalties would be Texas Tech gets a royalty. For any company that uses the Texas Tech logo has to pay a royalty fee to be able to do so.